Last thing we're going to cover is, of course, like I said, the largest news in election stuff going on this past week. So, Bernie Sanders has dropped out of the Democratic primary. He was, the front runner for a very long time, even going back to when he announced his candidacy. He was the front runner then. You had people like, on CNN, Chris Cillizza being like, no, the front runner is actually, Kamala Harris or Beto O'Rourke or Cory Booker. Didn't even come close to making it to the first primary. But for people who had functioning brains, it was obvious that Bernie Sanders was the front runner. He continued to be a front runner. Every now and then, he got kind of upstaged for a hot second by somebody else. Like Elizabeth Warren was the front runner for a period of time. But it was very clear that Bernie Sanders was a very serious candidate. And once the primary started, that steamrolled. So Iowa happened and all the fuckery that happened there. Pete was looked at as, he's in the lead. But then New Hampshire, Nevada, there were talks that, it's already over, probably. If he just wins South Carolina, it's over. As in, there's not even a competition at this point. But South Carolina was won by Joe Biden. It was actually just Joe Biden did extremely well there. And that happened on Friday? Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Yeah, Friday or Saturday. I don't know. But after Joe Biden won, there's just a 72-hour, media craze, just propping up Joe, being like, look at him. He's definitely going to be the winner now. He's got all this African-American support. Even though polls leading up to South Carolina, like national ones, actually had Bernie beating Biden in terms of African-American support. But after South Carolina, the James Clyburn endorsement, it steamrolled from there. The media backed behind Joe Biden entirely. You had Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar and drop out and endorse Biden, and Beto O'Rourke just came out of the woodwork to endorse Biden. I think it's the first time, I don't want to say the first time ever, but Pete Buttigieg was leading Joe Biden, I believe, in delegates and dropped out and supported Biden. Don't quote me on that. I didn't look it up before this. I think that just hit my mind right there. But yeah, it's one of those things where even if that's not true, like Pete Buttigieg, if Joe Biden was in the running, Pete Buttigieg was definitely in the running. But they dropped out and they endorsed Biden, and Super Tuesday came along. It was pretty much a four-way race between Biden, Bernie, Bloomberg, and Warren, and Biden ended up just not entirely sweeping, but just dominating the field on Super Tuesday, and that's when things started to look pretty bleak for Bernie Sanders. He went on, and he was no longer, the obvious front runner. And as primaries kept going on, it just kept going to Biden one after the other. And just this past, I believe, Wednesday, Bernie Sanders he suspended his campaign, so he's still technically in the running. He's going to be on the ballot. Any delegates he accrues from votes will translate into delegates he will have at the convention when they're trying to figure out the platform, the Democratic platform for the next 4 years or whatever. But he is officially out of the race. It's something that a lot of us saw coming. I'm sorry, I'm trying to read what I have written here. My handwriting should be a lot better since I have so much time to prepare for this now. But yeah, so that's basically the background. So there were a lot of pressures that came into Bernie dropping out. So there are people on the left who are saying, Bernie, you need to stay in, man, because you are a voice for less. We want you to take it all the way to the convention. I believe that over half the states still hadn't voted yet, or half the contests hadn't come out, give or take, a few. So for him to drop out at that point, a lot of us were saying, no, don't do that. Stay in. We want to vote for you. The math is difficult, but we're in unprecedented times. Everything you've been talking about for the past 5 years, you're getting proved right day after day with this pandemic happening. Don't just let it go to Joe. But then there are other people who are saying, no, like, dude, you need to drop out. These are mainly like the centrists and like, the vote blue no matter who Democrats were saying, like, you need to drop out because the longer you stay in, the more you're helping Trump, and you're going to guarantee a Trump win if you stay in. And listen, here's the thing: is Bernie, I believe, largely has kind of bought into that mindset that the reason Clinton lost in 2016 was because he stayed in. Now that's entirely not true. Which is, if you look at the like Bernie to Trump voters in 2016, it was like 18% or something. But then in 2008, it was like 26% of Clinton primary backers went for John McCain. So it was, and also in 2012, 2012, the people who I'm forgetting what the statistic was, but essentially this was like a pretty historic low in 2016 for a group of primary supporters to go for the other team. Usually it's a lot higher than that. But Bernie was pressured by that. I think he also was just uncomfortable because he's a fundamentally decent man. I think he was uncomfortable with people even feeling pressured to go to the polls with the pandemic happening. For him to stay in the race, it's kind of this implicit thing of maybe some people who are like, man, I got to go out there and vote for Bernie. With him suspending his campaign, they now don't feel that pressure to go out. Now, it would still, of course, benefit the movement if they were to go out and vote, but it's now a very, abstract benefit of like, okay, you can get delegates to, change the platform. It's not this, very black and white overt of like, you might let him be the nominee and therefore the president. So there's like less incentive of his own supporters to go out there and vote for him. But he felt pressured one way or another and decided that, he was going to suspend his campaign. And now we're left struggling and wondering, okay, what do we do post-mortem? Now, there are a lot of analyses out there. Some of them are pretty rigorous. For the most part, it's just people going out there and being like, okay, I think this, I think that. I haven't seen any like detailed studies, like statistical breakdowns or anything like that. Not that that's necessarily needed, but it's, it shows that there's been a very serious effort into look to why Bernie's campaign failed. Some people have said he wasn't mean enough, he wasn't tough enough on Joe Biden. I think that's actually fair. I think that he should have, especially after Super Tuesday, been tougher on Joe Biden, considering Joe Biden was his only competition at that point. But then some people are saying, like, no, he shouldn't have done that. Apparently they had internal polling that said that when Bernie went negative on Biden, it actually hurt him. They're saying Bernie should have been nicer to him. I have not come across anybody who said that Bernie should have been nicer, but I have come across people who said that Bernie should not have been meaner. Some people, are like pushing back against that kind of narrative. A lot of kind of focus has been put onto mainstream media and the fact that left media outlets have a dominance on young people and very specific sectors of the electorate, but they don't have that, wide just range to get out to everybody the way that MSNBC and CNN and CBS have access to, where they can just dominate the airwaves and reach, tens of millions of people every single night, the way that, the Young Turks would not be able to. So I think the media critique is very important, but essentially there's going to be a lot of post-mortem analysis for where we go from here moving forward with the movements. I'm actually reading this book, Bigger Than Bernie, and I'll be doing a review on it, eventually. Once I finish it, I'm taking it really slow. But it's this idea that, okay, what do we do moving forward? Because at the end of the day, Bernie was a leader, but he was a leader of a movement, and the movement carries on even without him explicitly being at the helm. So there's going to be a lot of post-mortem analysis, but now we're looking at what we have left, and what we have left is Joe Biden. So let's start with what Biden does not have that is necessary to win in November. I am not going to come out and say that Biden has zero chance. Biden has a very low chance, okay? So let's start with the fact that Biden has zero ground game. He does not have any people. Okay, granted, he can't really do it anymore. But even before the pandemic broke out, he didn't have people going around canvassing, knocking on doors. He didn't have people, phone banking or text banking. His actual operations where were with volunteers going out there and doing the work was minimal. His donors, he's almost entirely supported by big money donors. Small dollar Biden supporters, they just basically don't exist. Now, of course, they're out there, but it's nowhere near what Sanders had or Bernie had and what is necessary to win in November. He does not have the support of, like I said, left media organizations. Now, of course, I just said, left media organizations couldn't swing the primary. What does Joe Biden need moving into the general with them? Well, they do influence, like I said, very select parts of the electorate. And if these people are tepidly supporting him or just outright not supporting him, it's going to be pretty difficult for him to reach out to and win over these voters. And that goes right in line with the fact that his young support is mind-bogglingly low. Like, you look at the breakdowns of the primary between Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden and where their support came from, it's like 45 is the stark line, or if you're under 45, it was overwhelming in favor of Bernie Sanders, and if you're over 45, it's overwhelming in favor of Joe Biden. So there's a stark generational divide that happens there. And you can argue pretty well that, okay, well, it's the older voters who tend to, turn out to vote, and so if you're going to have the support of one or the other, you want the support of the older voters. But there's this great, I have it right here. Yeah, the Pew Research Center, I think this was from 2016, might have been 2018, but they asked non-voters hey, why didn't you vote? You're eligible to vote. Maybe you're not registered and stuff, but why didn't you vote? And 25% of them, so 40% of people didn't vote in 2016. 25% of them, so that's 10%, said, I'm just not inspired. Joe Biden is not going to inspire anybody. So that's just one of the things. He doesn't have this. So old people, they turn out to vote. Those young people who don't turn out to vote, it might be because they're just not inspired. Sagar and Jetty over at Rising makes this point phenomenally, which is I think he's in his 30s or something. But we'll just use me as an example. I'm 23. What has the government done to help me? Or what have I seen the government do in my entire life that has been remotely positive? All that's happened, I wasn't old enough to kind of recall it, but it was 9/11, it was the Iraq Wars. We crashed the economy in 2008 with the Great Recession. The same people crashed the economy, got bailed out. We passed a shitty corporate half-measure healthcare plan that still left 30 million Americans uninsured and still has 45,000 people dying every year because they don't have access to basic healthcare. That. And then we just go on, and now we're getting into a pandemic where we just did $4.5 trillion for corporations. I'm looking at this man, government has not worked well for me. Now I'm politically, involved and savvy and stuff, so I can look at other, nations, be like, oh wow, if we had something closer to what's going on in Denmark or in just the other Scandinavian countries, government could be a lot better. So I'm still optimistic, we can make change happen. But people around my age who aren't politically in touch, all they know is the government takes my tax money. And I don't know where it goes. They just take it. It's just gone. They've not seen government work for them. The way that, these boomers, the people who are going out there and voting are I remember, maybe they do remember, when Medicaid and, not Medicare, I think Medicare was under FDR, but Medicaid at least was under LBJ, and they're saying the government can do things that help people. A lot of young people have not seen that, so they're just simply not inspired, and they're not turning out to vote because they haven't seen anything affect them. And now you have this candidate Bernie Sanders who would have done that, who was going up and being listen, I can help you guys out. We're going to swing for the fences. We're going to do a Green New Deal. We're going to cancel student loan debt. We are going to do Medicare for all. Jobs guarantee. I'm more in favor of UBI, but there was this individual who really could have inspired them, and now they're not coming out to vote. And that goes into the next thing that Joe Biden does not have, which is support, like enthusiastic support in and of itself. There was a poll from, I wish I remember, this was like, 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago or something, that was breaking down Donald Trump's supporters and Joe Biden supporters and whether they are very enthusiastic, somewhat enthusiastic, or not very enthusiastic. And Trump, I think he was in like the 50s or something. I think it was like 59% are very enthusiastic to vote for Trump. And Joe Biden, just 24% of his own supporters. This is before Bernie dropped out. 24% of his own supporters were very enthusiastic to vote for him. He doesn't have support of his own supporters. You can't win with that. Just like I think today or yesterday, I lose track of days. Don't blame me. Today or yesterday, the New York Post came out with a poll that was like a majority of Democrats want to replace Joe Biden with like Andrew Cuomo. Already, it's been like 48 hours since Bernie dropped out, and people want to replace Joe Biden. It's absurd. It's absurd. And what it's showing is that Joe Biden, like he does not have anything set up to win. The only reason he has a shot is because everything just went to shit over this past month with unemployment skyrocketing. We're probably gonna hit at least 20%. Estimates put as high as 30%. GDP is expected to just get kneecapped coming into this next quarter. The stock market, I'll come out there, I'll clarify it. Stock market is not a good indicator of how regular people are doing. Headline unemployment, not a good indicator of how regular people are doing. But they are indicators. And the stock market dropped, I think it bottomed out, over this past month at like 18.5, like the Dow Jones, 18.5. Now it's up to like 23, which is absurd. It peaked at 29,000 around in like mid to late February. It just fell through the ground floor. And it's come back up to like 23,000 now, even after jobs report. Like, they'll come out and be like, yes, 6.6 million more people filed for unemployment this week. It's 10 times the amount of the previous record from 1985, and the Dow Jones goes up like 4 points. Like, yeah, that's wonderful. That's what we like to see. But even then, like, it was at the point where it was right. The stock market fell a lot, and there are a lot of people who will eat up, who believe or have some, kind of investments in the stock market who are like, damn, Trump really, screw the pooch on this one. He really dropped the ball. I don't know if I'll support him. I think that's a small actor. I think the people with them, it's like, yes, the Republicans will make the stock market go high. It's just an ideology. It's fundamental. It's not open for discussion. It's just that's a natural fact. But now with everything just getting thrown up into the mix, and now healthcare is a big thing, and Donald Trump very famously, tried to repeal the Affordable Care Act. He gutted it anyway. People might be like, okay, well, healthcare is going to be my number one thing. Democrats are better than Republicans on healthcare. That's one of those other things that's just like, okay, this is true. Like, oh, Republicans are good with the economy. Democrats are good with healthcare. In essence, like, not that both of them are wrong, but they're mainly wrong. Yeah, that's something else. But they might look at Joe Biden, who's he's obviously not gonna cut the Affordable Care Act, and be like, no, we need him because, with 35 million people losing their jobs, you have that same number of people, maybe more, maybe less, because you have dependents, and maybe you're married to somebody who still has their job and their health insurance. That's people who are going to be uninsured, moving forward. So a lot of people are going to be voting healthier. So there's a chance Joe Biden has it just with this going on. If it weren't for this pandemic, though, it would be game over. The attack ads write themselves. Joe Biden can't even put a coherent sentence together. He forgets where he is more often than not. And the right has already started to drum up and bring out very powerful attack ads against Joe Biden that, man, it makes snake emojis look like nothing. I mean, snake emojis were already nothing. But if you have liberals clutching their pearls, white knuckling their pearls because of snake emojis, they're not gonna survive through a grueling general election. It's 7 months out, and it's gonna be painful for them. And that's the kind of thing is Joe Biden is he's not ready to take charge and take the mantle of this. A great kind of observation for why this is, or why even Joe Biden knows he's not ready at all, is he's unable to win over the left. His overtures to the left have been middle fingers. He released two policy plans that he's picking up, and this is his olive branch. He's going to lower Medicare, the age to enroll in Medicare, from 65 to 60. Compare this to Hillary Clinton, who was in favor of reducing the Medicare age to 50 or 55. Joe Biden's overture to the left is, I'm going to reduce it to 60 years old. That means that when you are 30 years old, you just need to live your life again, once more. You need to do those 30 years once more, and then you'll get, that healthcare coverage, the free healthcare coverage that every other developed nation in the world has. You just one more time. So I'm, just over a third of the way there. I'm excited for lowering that, Medicare age. His other thing is, yes, we will cancel, I think a portion of the student debt for people with low to middle incomes who went to public colleges and universities or HBCUs or other things like that. So an extremely means-tested, kind of student loan debt cancellation plan that is just laughable. Those are the two things he has done to reach out to the left. That's all it is. Who has ever seen a general election candidate pivot left? Doesn't happen. When a Democratic candidate becomes a nominee, they've been appealing to the primary, which is obviously to the left of the general electorate. And so now if they want to win over some more people in the general electorate, the theory goes, I had some problems with this kind of thinking, is, okay, now we need to move to the center more. We need to get more moderate. We need to tone down our message so we can win over people who, who are torn between the two options and want to see both of them come toward them. I think it's absurd, but again, that's a whole separate thing that I'm sure I'll get into at another point. But he's moving to the left, which is strange from a strategy standpoint of this is how things have been before. But what it's showing is even Joe Biden knows that he's got some weakness going on with the left wing of the party, the Bernie Sanders supporters. But on top of that, it also means that he probably was not ready for to be handed the nomination like this. For him to now start making, movements to try to win over the left, these are things he should have been doing throughout the primary cycle, and he failed to do that. And so now he's realizing oh shit, maybe I shouldn't have been, talking down to people on the left the entire time. Maybe I need to get their votes. But I also don't think that's happening. Which is, I don't think that he's doing this to win over the left. I think he's doing this to make moderates and centrists think that he's winning over the left. Which is, like I said, there was a poll that came out that's yes, Democrats will want to replace Biden with Cuomo. Cuomo's terrible, by the way. He's god awful. Why is New York City the hotspot in the world? It's because Cuomo sucks. But yeah, Biden is doing this because his entire strategy, this primary, his messaging call to arms for his supporters is, I'm electable. His wife, Jill Biden, famously was getting interviewed with some people why should people vote for your husband? And her reasoning was, well, maybe your candidate is better on healthcare. Maybe they're better in other things, but Joe Biden's the electable one. So Joe Biden, his whole message is, I'm electable. And now you have all these people on the left being like, not electable to us. It's not happening. And maybe there's some centrists who are legitimately worried, like, is he not going to win now because, the left wing, the Bernie Sanders supporters, the DSA Rose Twitter people, they don't like him. Is that going to be a problem? I saw on Twitter, like, after Super Tuesday, when, Joe Biden did really well, like, pro-Biden, like, Facebook pages, they weren't celebrating. They're like, oh no, like, we're seeing that, like, Sanders supporters aren't going to come out to vote for him. This is a big concern of ours. So I think what it is Joe Biden is trying to come out there and be like, listen, all my supporters who are now not going to be who are now, considering their support for me because they're realizing I'm not electable. I am electable. I'm going to win over the left with this one simple trick. Two simple tricks of just means testing student loan cancellation and reducing Medicare to 60. They'll love that. Now, the reason why I believe that he is doing this to appease kind of the moderates and not to actually win over the left is he's never tried to win over the left. Not a single thing he has done has been to, make sure the left likes him. He said, I have no empathy for millennials. He's told like 4 different people to vote for somebody else if they don't like him. Even saying to one guy, like, vote for Trump, vote for Trump. Like, what he is doing is he is making a bet. It's not even a calculated bet. What he's saying is, these people have to vote for me because I'm the Democrat. I'm the closest they're going to get. So he's made the calculation, or his staff has made the calculation, that Donald Trump is such an existential threat that all of the people who are even slightly left-leaning, or mainly all the people who are super left-leaning, who don't like Biden, Trump's so existential, they have to swallow that pill and vote for Biden. That's why he thinks he doesn't need to win them over. Because he's like, my opponent is so, god-awful, terrible, is so repulsive that people will be forced to vote for me. And it's a risky political calculation. I don't even know if it ever really pays off. I think that's just pure hubris coming out, where he's just saying, like, yeah, I've got it already in the bag. It's already done. Like, I don't need to worry about this with that. I just need to win over these moderate suburban Republicans. They don't exist. So Biden's out. Biden's out. I wish. Bernie's out. Biden is now leading the charge. We'll see how he goes from here, but it's really looking to be difficult for Democrats to gin up the support that they're going to need come November. Now, here's the thing, is we're 7 months from the general election. If this past month is any indication of how things might be, we could be 7 months. It could be an election between like a toaster and like 3 bananas. There's no idea where things will be 7 months from now, and we'll see.